Very, very excited today to return to the great sport of alpine skiing and to talk to Australia's most successful male slalom and giant slalom skier. He is a multiple Australian champion, multiple champion in other events around the world, and a two-time Olympian competing in 2006 in Turin and 2010 in Vancouver. And I'm just going to say this right now, the voice of alpine skiing in Australia, after a very successful stint during the recent Beijing Olympic Games. It's a pleasure to welcome off the podium the one, the only Mr. Jono Brauer. Jono, first of all, pleasure to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining me.
That was quite the intro there, Ben. Thanks, mate.
Got to
be here, and yeah,
got to give that ego a bit of a push, basically.
Give it a stroke for me.
I'm always up for stroking. Started
Mate,
coming out of my head, and I'm like, am I going there? But I did. So, wow, that's a very interesting start. But Jono, it's obviously something I'm not sure too often how you get to sit down and sort of chat about your career, your skiing. Obviously, you're onto many different ventures now and have been retired for a little bit. But I mean, is this something that you still get a chance to do and kind of relive this amazing skiing career that you did have?
Usually only in my own lunchbox, telling my kids how probably embellishing a few stories, but no, it's, it was a great experience to be able to get involved again this year, with the broadcast with Channel 7. And that was, that's obviously the most I've spoken about ski racing in a long time. And, that was awesome. It was really great. And it's just nice to be able to relive that once upon a time dream, and stokes up a lot of great memories. So
how did the dream get started? Sort of how did an Australian end up becoming a two-time Winter Olympian? Obviously not a journey that a lot of Australians ultimately end up making.
No, you're right. It's not. My mum in particular and my grandparents were incredibly enthusiastic skiers. Mum has been skiing her entire life, and she was the one who was really critical to us, getting involved and putting in the hard yards. Back in the early days when my sisters were sort of 2 when they started, 3, and then I was 4 when I started skiing. We used to do some family trips, and then when I was 10, my mum relocated to the mountains to Thredbo, and pretty much that's where it kicked off for me. So I'm the youngest of 3, and my sisters were sort of off doing their thing and finishing school, and I moved down here in year 5 with my mum, and basically there was not really much option for kids to go skiing in ski school and holiday programs like there is now, and there was race club only. And I think my mum had a cafe down here where she worked 12-hour days, and I think that was really just the way to get me out of her hair. And it turned out I love ski racing, so it was that was the beginning of what became a lifelong passion and dedication.
And was it a case of ski racing was all that was available? Were things like freestyle skiing and cross-country skiing, things like that, also available? And did you give your hand at those as well?
Yeah, definitely they were there. So moguls in particular, the slopestyle was not a thing back then. Way back when I was a young kid, it sort of came up through my teenage years. But ski racing was the number one, I guess, alpine sport. Cross country wasn't. Short bursts I'm good at, long stints not so much. So cross country was crossed off the list pretty quickly, and I'm a bit of a speed junkie. So alpine or ski racing was just natural for me. I came from riding motorbikes, riding horses, racing go-karts, anything to do with going faster was my bag. So it was just natural thing for me to get into ski racing, and I just loved it from first day.
I was going to ask if there were other sports that you were involved in. Named a couple there. I mean, you mentioned go-karting. Was that something then we could have maybe been talking to you about something different? Was, do you do much of that going competitive? Could have been a Formula One driver or something like that potentially.
Oh, Danny Ricciardo, eat your heart out. So my dad actually he used to race was then in the 70s, 60s and 70s, the V8 supercars. So he he used to race alongside Bob Jane and Norm Beachy.
Wow.
Got a fourth in Bathurst, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so he unfortunately I think it was 71 in Sandown, he rode his car off. He split his Ford Mustang in half, and that was the end of his racing career. So he and I used to do a little bit of go-karting for fun, and semi-competitively when I was a kid. But it became pretty apparent, you can't. we're not from a very affluent background. Didn't have a huge amount of cash behind me, and very quickly realised that automotive sports are extremely demanding on the wallet. And not to say that skiing isn't, but fortunately living in a ski resort made it a lot more attainable. So, and skiing, I just love skiing. So it was easy.
What was that scene like, sort of growing up and kind of making your way through the ranks? Because I'm guessing we're sort of talking late 80s, early 90s, when, we're living in a period in Australian winter sports where it's obviously a little bit different to it is now, and won a medal at the Olympics, something that's really not getting a focus, anything along those lines. So I can imagine it was a bit of a challenge, I guess, to kind of make your way up the ranks to go on that international scene.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was pretty grassroots back then. Vast majority of people that were involved here in Australia were Europeans. There was a lot of Austrians out here. And what's been, what a lot of people don't actually recognise is that a lot of the really successful European coaching staff have actually started their career in Australia. And with that, they bring obviously a lot of experience, but a huge amount of enthusiasm and excitement for the sport, which, generally Australians, especially back then, didn't. Everyone's excited, but those guys come in, they're just frothing, right? And they have the ability to identify skill that could be successful on a world stage. And fortunately enough for me, a few of my coaches were European when I was a young kid, and they sort of took me under their wing. And that was when we started traveling overseas at a pretty early age. And there's no point in going half-hearted. It's just it was an all-out attack for me from every race, and that was, I guess, proved to be the turning point for me to be able to show that I could meet a game on the world stage.
And was that then something when you started going on the world stage, things like that something like an Olympics became something that you wanted to strive towards? Or was this something as a young kid that you automatically were like, this is a goal, I want to go to an Olympics one day?
It probably wasn't the Olympics that was my goal. It was to make a career out of ski racing, was the number one thing. So, I realized that if I could go skiing, and I was a sucker, right? Like every day that we weren't training, I was skiing from first lift to last lift. Like I just loved it. And my coaches used to hate me for it because, as we know now, sports science is a major player in being a successful athlete, and you need downtime, you need time off. And I just refused. So, whatever I could do to turn skiing into a career path and ensure that I could keep skiing for a significant period of my life, then I was going to do it. So, back to the question, Olympics wasn't necessarily the number one goal, but it was 100% formed a part of what I was trying to achieve.
I believe you first went international sort of late 90s period around that time, and anybody who knows a little bit about alpine skiing in Australia in the late 90s obviously would remember Zali winning bronze back in Nagano, our only ever alpine medal. What was that like as an alpine skier to see someone from Australia win an Olympic medal? Was that inspiring to kind of see that? I mean, to see that happen? Because I can imagine for the sport that was a massive boost in that period.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah, it was massive. I mean, what was that in 98? So I was 17. It was, for me, funding in those early years, it was relatively hard to come by. And as I'm sure you're aware, the way the funding models work is one or number of athletes need to achieve at the highest level, and then the funding gets pushed back down into the entry level of sport, and then it sort of works its way back up again, and you create this pathway. So for us, that was extremely exciting to see that Zali had been able to achieve, at the Olympic Games. She'd already been very successful in the World Cup anyway, so she wasn't like she was coming from far left field. However, it sort of really solidified that alpine skiers from Australia can succeed, as well as anyone else in the world.
When it comes to choosing the disciplines in Alpine, you're mentioning obviously you like to go fast, thinking about things like the downhill, the Super G, but I believe you ended up becoming quite partial to the slalom, which obviously was Ali's speciality and not as fast as the downhill. But I mean, is that something that you just gradually grow to liking because you're more attuned to it? I mean, kind of how do you work out that, hey, this is what I maybe prefer over the downhill and other events that you do have in alpine skiing?
Yeah, so as a junior racer, you dabble in a bit of everything. So you're not necessarily just honing your skills into slalom or giant slalom from the age of 13 or 14, 15, whatever it is. And so, as you're progressing through your developmental phases and pathway, it's it becomes pretty apparent what you're more akin to succeeding in. And slalom and giant slalom in particular was something that I just started to I guess achieve at a relatively high level pretty quickly. As I said, if I was skiing, I was happy. I loved all the disciplines, and sometimes I'd have a little conundrum within myself to go, oh, maybe I should do a bit more downhill, or maybe I should do a little bit more of this. But at the end of the day, everybody loves to succeed and hopefully stand on that top step of the podium, and I was able to achieve that more regularly in slalom. So we sort of started to specialize a little bit more towards the end of my teens and into my early 20s in that direction.
It is such a crazy discipline to think that somebody wants to ski through sticks that you're bashing your legs into left, right. And I mean, it just seems like one of these crazy sports that people do. But I guess if you're good at it, who gives a shit, right?
Yeah, and you're right. And it's there's a few things that, like, when you're looking from the outside and you're not involved in skiing slalom, you haven't done before, that you don't quite recognize. It's a real art form, and you have to, there's certain body types that will perform very well. So you have to have extremely fast twitch fibers. So, you need to be extremely agile to be able to move quickly between those gates and create speed every time. Otherwise, you're always behind the line. And that was something that was, everything's coming at you so quickly. You have to, it's hundredths or thousandths of a second that you're making decisions and movements and putting your legs or your arms or your hips or wherever, into different positions. So that's really exciting. I just love whilst you're not going as fast, everything's coming at you a lot faster because you've got these things trying to, hit you in the head. And you've got to get down to the bottom as fast as you can.
And the psychological element too. I mean, God, I struggle to remember sometimes, what I'm doing in the morning and what order I'm doing it, let alone going down a bloody ski slope that fast while having to remember what order you got to go left, right, things like that. I mean, how do you work on that mentality aspect of it outside of the physical things? Because I can imagine that's just equally important in something like slalom.
Yeah, across all disciplines, memorizing the course and being able to look ahead and adjust to the line or to the rut that's been formed by the earlier races. That's all part and parcel across every discipline, and mental focus is one of the largest contributors to an athlete's success in ski racing, be it remembering the course, dealing with changes in conditions or light or temperature or snow conditions, dealing with the pressures of competition, all of those things. The mental game is absolutely massive, and like you said, you have to remember it. But we do that every day in training, right? So every day you're training, you're going out, you look at the course before you start skiing it, and you go, okay, right, there's this turn here and that turn there, and there's a combination or there's a whatever. So it just becomes second nature. That's just part and parcel of everyday life.
Were there things that you could do outside of what you were just saying there with the course aspect? Like, I don't know, you read a couple of brain teasers, do some Sudoku, like something that really kind of gets the mind thinking that can work on a mental aspect of things?
We were not, there wasn't that much tech around when I was traveling. So, iPhones and whatnot, and tablets and, wireless internet all around the world was not easily accessible back then. So we didn't, that didn't really ever come to the forefront. Pretty much, your mind's turned on as once you're on the hill, you're switched on. You're at 100%. So you get in the start gate, and it's go time. There's no point in going in at 50%. It's just you turn on and you hit the hammer.
You ultimately make your Olympic debut in Turin, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But that period, sort of late 90s through the early 2000s, when you're going on the international scene, making your way through the ranks, the junior ranks, I believe at one point you were ranked number 2 for your age discipline in the slalom in the world, so kind of making through those ranks. I mean, was Salt Lake a possibility sort of in that period, or kind of was it always, if you were looking towards an Olympics 2006, Turin was always that goal, and if Salt Lake had happened, it would have happened?
Salt Lake is an interesting story, and I'm sure that someone from the AOC would have a different version to me. However, I was injured. I got injured. I did my first ACL ligament break just prior to the World Championship event in St. Anton in 2001 at the World Junior Champs, actually. And that event in St. Anton was the qualifying event for the 2002 Games. Now, obviously, I couldn't compete. I then returned to competition the following season, and let's just say that I was proving that I had the ability to be on the Olympic team alongside my athletes, and had done that a number of times over. And unfortunately, the powers that be disagreed. And look, I totally understand that there's rules and regulations and systems and processes that need to be followed, because the flow-on effects can be to other sports and other events can be detrimental. So unfortunately, I was denied the ability to go and ski in in Salt Lake, to the point that I ended up getting told I could compete, and I flew there, and then got off the plane and was told I wasn't allowed to compete.
Wow.
So that was a bit of a mind game. So unfortunately, my goal was to compete in Salt Lake. My original goal when I was a kid was to go to 5 games. Was I thought if I could stay uninjured, I'd be able to go all the way through. So what would that be? 2002, 6, 10, 14, 18. So
wow, yeah.
So anyway, look, it didn't happen, and we missed out on Salt Lake, and then the focus turned on to back into the World Cup. Improving world rankings and just kicking on from there and continuing the dream.
So did you stay in Salt Lake? Like, were you there and you thought, I may as well cheer on the team, or party it up? Fuck you guys, I'm just going to live this up right now. Or was it the case of I'm going to go now? This is bullshit.
No, well, there was a bit of there was a fair bit of the BS commentary. However, no, man, I was sticking around. Yeah, for sure. We lived it up. And actually, I'd been training with the British team at the time, and a really good friend and teammate of mine, Alan Baxter. He won the bronze medal in slalom in that event, to then controversially have it taken away from him, to then controversially have his name cleared later at a later date. And so, obviously we didn't know that was going to take place. So we absolutely let Salt Lake rip on that evening of the slalom event.
I can imagine.
There in the stands watching, talked my way into the after parties, and, was like, screw it, let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. Insane. It was good fun. You've got to find the positives, right? And I think, coming back to mindset, you get thrown challenges and adversities all the time as an athlete, and fortunately, I was able to stay positive throughout that experience. And then actually the week after the Olympics, we had a NORAM Cup, which is like the B level, in the next level down in Maine in America, and we had 3 of the 4 US Olympic team athletes there who were all top 15, and I managed to win the race. So wow. It was a big up yours to the authorities back in Australia, and I don't harbour any resentment. I was obviously bummed out about it, but I guess it was nice to be able to say, hey, I know that's the rules and you had to follow them, but I think you might have made the wrong decision in this case. So, and Yeah.
When it, I mean, obviously, if you don't want to go into it, don't go into it. But when you say the rules, was it like a quota thing? Was it kind of based on qualification times? I mean, kind of what was it that these rules that basically you didn't get that slot in Salt Lake?
It was just a qualification criteria which I was unable to achieve at that race in St Anton because I couldn't compete. So, and then there was a second criteria which was significantly harder, and I didn't make it. I had a number of DNFs in those events in the following season. So, look, I totally understand why it happened and everything like that. I would love to see probably a little bit more discretion being used for extenuating circumstances, but that's not the world we live in. There's politics in sport, and like I said before, if they'd made an exception for me, that would have had a massive flow-on effect to, who knows what in winter sports or summer sports. You never know. So I 100% respect that decision and that what the leaders in their positions at the time had to do. I just was bummed out about it. That's the bottom line.
And then do you use that to spur you on? I mean, you mentioned straight after a week later, but 4 years' time, you've got another Olympics to push towards you. So I can imagine that spurs you on to go towards Turin.
Yeah, 100%. Like you've got to find, when there's adversity thrown at you, you've got to use it, to create some form of push and power to keep you going. There's no point. I don't know anyone who's come up with an issue, an injury, or a situation like I had faced in Salt Lake, and then gone and sat in the corner and bitched and moaned about it and had a great outcome. So, it's something that we teach our kids. We've got 2 kids now that are 8 and 10, and whilst you're allowed to, by all means, reflect and take time to deal with those situations, but getting bummed out and upset over for a long period of time isn't going to get you past the situation that you're facing. So, you've got to take on some resilience and use that, whatever it is that you've come across, to spur you on to do better.
So when it came to 2006, you're selected, you're off the plane, you're there. Was there still a part of you thinking like, shit, don't take this away from me? Or were you 100%, no, this is mine now. You can't take this away from me now. I am an Olympian.
No, the way, Australia is pretty good. If you qualify for within the criteria and you the quota spots are there and they're available, they generally wouldn't tell us that we're going and then go, oh, actually, hang on a second. No, you're not now. Mind you, I have heard that happening, but didn't happen to me. And I was confident that once I'd met that criteria for 2006, we're all across the rules of the IOC and quota spots and whatnot. So we knew that was going to happen, and it was just a matter of not getting hurt prior to the Olympics and making sure that we were in good shape to go and compete as best we could.
So what was that moment like then when you achieved that quota, when you knew then you were going to the Olympics? Was it a sense of achievement, like amazing, or do you kind of just, okay, cool, going to the Olympics, switch focus to that, it's another event, I've got to focus for that now?
Bit of A and a bit of B, obviously stoked to be able to, represent our country and go. I mean, it's like the highest level that you can achieve in sport, right? So very few people get to be able to go and compete at the Olympic Games, and so to be able to do that, the first thing is just I was stoked. The second thing, I was pretty relieved actually, because it's a mind game competing and meeting criteria, and because it's not a walk in the park by any means. Back when for 2006 and 2010 anyway, the ones I was competing in. So it was not an easy goal to achieve, to be able to get to the world rankings and whatnot and meet the criteria. So it was, a bit of a weight off the shoulders once you've done that, because there's a lot of expectation going to the Olympic Games and being on the national team for a number of years and all of those, scenarios that play out. So, and then, once we did recognise that we'd met the criteria and it was all confirmed, it was like, right, well, obviously we've got a really, really big goal to strive towards, and it's just extra motivation again to continue to kick ass, which is great, because then that flows on to the rest of the season in the World Cup and Europa Cup and everything else that's going on.
Always love to hear about Olympic experiences from our guests, things like if you did the opening or closing ceremonies, village life, pin collecting, bumping into Sean White, people like that. I mean, did you sort of soak that up in Turin, or was that something that when you got to Vancouver, you kind of took more note of that because it's sort of a different period around going to your second Olympics rather than your first Olympics?
So on the ceremonies, generally in alpine skiing. So in Turin and Vancouver, I was competing in the downhill. The downhill combined in Turin, and then the downhill and Super G in Vancouver. And the training days for that downhill race, you have to have training days on the course because of the danger, the level of which you're skiing at, and the speed and whatnot. So those training days are always, either prior to or on the opening ceremony days. So unfortunately, it doesn't make sense to go down to the opening ceremony because it's, you can imagine, I think the guys in Vancouver, they ended up getting back from Vancouver from the ceremony at like 3:30 in the morning. And then a few of them were getting up at 6 o'clock to get on the hill to do the training. So it's not, by no means is that advantageous to your performance. So we missed that. But in Turin, I'm pretty relaxed. I kind of say hi to everyone. I'm not too shy about getting involved and having a chat and whatnot. But Turin, we were, the Alpine events were separated. They were in Sestriere, so it was just the Alpiners, pretty much, who were in that village. There might have been some Alpine cross country and maybe one other crew were in that village. So it was a pretty small group of people. But we took full advantage of the Italians being nice and relaxed to the point that the last night after the slalom, we had, my whole family was there and we had a big party, and I don't know, whatever time we're heading home, and my sister, when the last bus was leaving for the next village around the corner where my sister was staying, she's like, "No way, I'm coming back to the village with you guys." And I kind of look at her like, there's 20-foot high fences and you don't have accreditation and yada, yada. So she's pretty crafty. So anyway, she decided that's what she was doing. And, late in the morning, I walked through the gate and she jumped like a 20-foot high fence and then convinced the security guard that she was someone from the team and she wasn't. And then it was pretty funny. Fortunately, there was this like an oppa, like an old Italian gentleman who was watching it all unfold and came up to the guy who was trying to kick us out and was just like, hey, see, it's okay. Look, he's going to have a good time the last night. It's okay. Let him go and have a good time, guys. Everything's okay. And we managed that, and it was cool. Actually, the next morning, my coach at the time, Helmut Spiegel is his name, and he wasn't out that late, and my sister and I are walking down to the breakfast hall, and Helmut's walking up the stairwell, and she's like, "Oh, hey, Helmut," and he's, "Oh, hey, Katie," and then did a full double take, turned around like, "What the fuck?
What are you
How
doing
did you get in here?" It was a long story. We're going for breakfast. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So anyway, it was the Olympics is you've got to go and you've got to take full advantage of what's on offer, and if you didn't come out with some decent story, then I reckon you've done it wrong.
Well, I think you ended up going to two pretty good Olympics and also being at Salt Lake as well. I mean, to have Salt Lake followed by Turin, followed by Vancouver. I mean, no disrespect to the last few Olympics, but I can't imagine if you had gone to Russia, you would have been doing some of those similar things. So I think you went to a few good ones there, Jono.
Yeah, it was good. It was really fun, and the Olympic experience. If anyone's got the chance to enjoy it, be it competing or in another role, grab it with both hands.
I've got to mention Turin. I mean, you obviously completely separate, as you said, basically from the rest of the team. But Turin. Everyone thinks of Turin in Australia. They think of the great Dale Begg Smith. Did you ever bump shoulders with Dale at all? I know different type of skiing, but was something. And did you end up getting partying with him on his private island? Did he ever invite you out there at some point?
No. My pop-ups were blocked.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, the inventor of pop-ups, Dale Begg
Yep.
Smith. Look, Dale was a unique character, obviously an incredible athlete. So focused and just professional, and he was great. He was a great athlete, and he was great to be able to come and compete for Australia and do what he did. And that is really set off a great chain reaction for the rest of middle sport, to what it is today, to where we saw Jakara winning this year. We didn't really hang out much. That's we bump shoulders. You see each other at a few different things, but that's pretty much it. You're on a very different path. Every discipline's going into different parts of the world, but yeah, we certainly caught up with everyone at the closing ceremony in Turin and also in Vancouver, and let it rip. Had a good time.
That's the main thing. If I'm also not mistaken, I do believe Turin was the last time Bruce McVay did a Winter Olympics, and I do believe he commentated Alpine skiing, if I remember. So, I mean, you can say you at least had Bruce commentate you. So, I mean, that's a big honour in itself as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking with Matty Hill, my man, my lead commentator for this year's Olympics, he has much love for Bruce. He holds him in the highest of regards. So if Bruce was commentating me crashing into the nets in Turin, then that is going to put that on the highlights list.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. Because, yeah, obviously Channel 9 had Vancouver, then Channel 10 had Sochi, and then I don't think Bruce was in Pyeongchang and obviously didn't do Beijing. So, you could have that weird distinction as of right now of Bruce's last Winter Olympics, and he commentated you crashing. Oof, so there you go.
Feeling good.
Yeah. But obviously on
my morning.
Exactly. There you go. You can take that. That's better than coffee. But I mean, just on the performance, super combined and slalom, obviously not finishing both of them. I mean, I can't imagine leaving Turin. You're satisfied with not finishing both of them. No. But I mean, how did you leave those Olympics? Did it spur you on again to go over another 4 years to go, okay, well, I've made the Olympics, but I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve. So bring on another 4 years.
Yeah, that was pretty difficult. Hey, I was in the best form of my career. I'd won a Europa Cup leading into that. I had some really encouraging performances on the World Cup and was feeling really good. And then even in that combined, I hadn't been skiing much downhill for years until that season. And then I had a 14th in the combined in Chamonix leading into the games, and the term for us is you ski out of your boots in the downhill, which was great, and then leading into the actual event, the combined event, we had the training runs like we talked about, and I think we had 3 or 4 training runs, and I was consistently up there with the fastest guys, and looking back, some of my career, some of the issues that I guess crashes or problems or whatever you want to call it that I had through my career was I was charging too hard. I was always at 100% or trying to go past 100%. And that's exactly what I did in Turin. I knew I was skiing fast. I had super good equipment. I was getting really great support from my ski company at the time. And to the point, I think in the speed traps, I was top 3, 3 days in a row or something. I was going really, really well, and I just pushed too hard and, made a stupid mistake, and which I made a move that I hadn't done all week. And I just thought, I can gain another 100th of a second here. And it was obviously not the right thing. So I ended up in the nets, and looking back at that, the split time prior to my crash, I think I was 300ths behind the guy who ended up coming third. And, who knows, there's still the rest of the downhill course, and there's still a slalom run to go. But he and I'd been consistently faster than him in the downhill portions all week. And then I'd been on par with him in slalom for the whole season. So, probably the most difficult thing is the what ifs when you're at that level and you just make a dumbass mistake. That was certainly a bitter pill to swallow after the combined day. I helped swallow bitter pill with a few beers, and took a few days off, and then coming into the slalom, I was like, right, redemption time again, and whatever, I made it like 15 or 20 gates or something, and straddled. And a straddle is where the tip of your inside ski goes on the inside of the gate, right? And a lot of the time, it's something that it is just unfortunate. You make a move, your skis on 3 centimeters or a centimeter too close to the gate when you initiate the turn. It's just something that can happen. So that was like, there's a lot of tough questions at the end of that games. Just thinking about why, being on the best form of my life and going into the biggest events, and why couldn't have gone the other way. But again, I've had surgery. I think I've lost count actually how many times I've had surgeries, like 12, maybe 15. I don't know. But every time you have a surgery, you're like, it's the same thing, like, far out. Why did that happen to me? Why did I crash? Why did I do that? And you've got to stop that thought immediately and just go, right, now what do I do to get back to where I was, or get, further ahead? And how do I be, fix the issues that I've been dealing with? So, Turin was a really great experience, and certainly not what I was hoping to come away with, but shit, mate, that's life.
Is it just a competitive nature in an athlete that gets you over those humps that you're just talking about? Kind of that will to keep going, knowing that what you are capable of in those what if scenarios, that had things gone a different way, you could be sitting here 16 years later talking about it completely differently.
Yeah, I think so. I'd proven a number of times as a junior and early in my 20s that I had the ability to ski as fast as, or at least close to as fast as anyone else. I probably never would have been the Marcel Hirscher of the world, or the Michaela. Well, I know I wouldn't have been the Marcel or the Michaela. There's guarantee on that. But I always thought I could be in the top 10 or top 15 in the world, and I'd sort of prove that with a few different results. And once you have that knowledge, then you're spurred on, right? Like, you're like, okay, I've done it once before, I've done it twice before, I did it in training, or I did it in this, or whatever. You've got that sort of fire to be able to keep pushing, and that's just what you've got to do if you want to succeed.
You talk about those surgeries. It's fascinating to hear you not even remember how many surgeries you've had, but give us a bit of an insight into an alpine skier's injuries. I'm guessing there's lots of leg injuries, I'm assuming, kind of based on the sport. I mean, is that where the majority of those surgeries are coming on your legs?
Yeah. Knees in particular. So, I mentioned the ACL, so the anterior cruciate ligament. There's a lot of, that's the most common, body part to blow up or break. So just the forces that are created in alpine skiing are quite extraordinary. And it only takes one small mistake or a bump in the snow that you don't see, or whatever it may be. So, legs, knees, legs, hips, backs. Like my teammate Craig Branch, he had significant problems with his back, where a lot of compression in his vertebrae, and bulging discs and herniated discs in his spine, and that is absolutely debilitating. So, you'd be hard pressed to find a professional skier of any discipline, alpine or otherwise, moguls will be the same, and slopestyle as well, that isn't pushing the limits and unfortunately, getting injured. And those athletes that are probably going to be the most successful and have the longest career are the ones who can manage the recovery time and get back on the horse and get cracking.
Is it a case of, when you see someone like Ian Healy or Adam Gilchrist, years of wicket keeping, their fingers are all disjointed and bent and mangled. Like, if you are at a beach in shorts, so your knees and legs kind of all disjointed, and skiers, like, you could go to a beach, oh, they're a skier, look at their legs.
You know what? Time heals all wounds, man. So I can certainly walk all right. Running's not my thing. I went for a run with my daughter for, I think it was probably about maybe a kilometre the other day, and at the turn at 500 metres, she's training for a cross country, and at the turn I was just like, oh God, let's get home. Like, it's So in normal, if I'm just walking to the bar to get a beer, you can't tell the difference. But if you were to, if you saw me in my shorts, you'd see a few scars, and that's just right. It's part and parcel, right? Like,
so basically, you're saying if I challenge you to a sprint, I might actually win.
There's a high chance that I won't be going very far. I'll go really fast for like 15 meters. That has nothing to do with the fact that I've been to the gym 3 times in the last 12 years.
I'm just a bit competitive. If I want to beat an Olympian, I'll just choose my disciplines to do it, right? I'm not going to be the same Bolt at sprint, but I might be the same Bolt at skiing. So it's like Jono Brauer. I'm not going to beat you at skiing, but I might beat you at a sprint.
There you go. Let's do it.
Hey, just I'm thinking with that one. Going into Vancouver, though, I mean, do you set yourself sort of based on the form you were going into it? Was it a case of, okay, I want to finish at least this time around, or like, do you set yourself a goal like I want to get top 20, top 30? Sort of, what was that mentality going into your second Olympics?
Yeah, another tough one. Hey, I'd qualified the season prior, so February 20, what was that, 2009, and I'd met the criteria, so I knew I was safe. I knew I'd done everything I needed to do to get my spot for the games, and was confident that I'd be going. And again, I by that stage I'd actually changed disciplines. So after my whatever surgery it was, I can't remember. Essentially, one surgeon that I was dealing with in Austria who did a lot of work with the Austrian team was like, listen, your knees are cooked, like it's done, hang your boots up. And I'm like, man, I'm not hang my boots up for what? Like, no, I'm not doing it. And so anyway, we eventually agreed on that if I can change out of slalom, because the problem with slalom skiing is the impact is really short and sharp, and you're doing it, you might make 1,000 turns a day, right? So my patellar tendons in my knee were just getting absolutely reamed, and my body wasn't able to heal the problem fast enough. So I was, there was lots of injections and there was lots of painkillers and all sorts of things for me to continue skiing. It was just not sustainable. So we eventually made the decision, we'll switch to speed. We'll go to Super G and downhill and give that a shot. And that season in 2009, I'd just come off a patellar tendon surgery, and was just hitting my stride. Had a couple of good results in Europa Cup, sort of, got my world ranking from whatever it was when I started, 400 in the world, down to I think I got to 62, 67, something like that. So, that first step is getting into the top 100. So I achieved that, and I was like, right, we're back, baby. And through those Europa Cup results, managed to meet the criteria for the Olympics for the following year, and then 2 weeks later at Europa Cup finals, basically put my leg into a hole, in the middle of a turn, doing around 100 k's an hour, and then the flow-on effect of that was I put my tibia 8 millimeters into the base of my femur,
Ouch.
And then high-sided off a roll and sort of cartwheeled, and I don't know how many times, and pretty much just obliterated the lateral, the outside of my right knee. So a lot of bone damage, no ligaments, no cartilage or meniscus left. So got a free chopper ride that day to the hospital. Yeah, great. And then, had surgery, made a comeback, but, the trauma in my right leg was really, I kind of knew that there was a really, really slim chance that I was never going to be able to compete at a high level again. So because I'd already met the criteria, I had, committed to that season leading into Vancouver. And we trained, and I had a fantastic physio who was working with us, Simon Ruse, who is an absolute legend, and he's done a lot of work with the moguls team in particular over the last decade, after finishing up with Craig and I. And he got me back on the hill and skiing, but let's just say the downhill at the Olympics was my first downhill race of the season. So,
Wow.
leading into the games where you should be doing, maybe you're doing 10 or I don't know, 8, 10, 12, 15 runs a day. If I was lucky, I was getting, maybe I'd get 3 runs every 2 or 3 days in training. So just, a lot of cortisone injections, a lot of painkillers to get into the start gate for that event. So, I'd given myself the time frame of the end of Jan. If I was still in as much pain at the end of Jan as I was in July when I first started skiing after my injury, then I knew that was probably the tools down, and that was exactly, it was only getting worse actually. So yeah, mate. So I knew going into Vancouver that was going to be my last event. And obviously going in completely undercooked is not what you want to be doing when you're, the whole world's watching. And it's, when you think of your last event, you want to go out trying to win, not just trying to get to the bottom. So, but it's not every day you get the opportunity to go to the Olympic Games. And, I had a lot of friends and family there, and that really made the experience unforgettable. And, One positive, probably the biggest positive, was that the downhill and Super G finished early in the first week. So that meant that I was sponsored by Red Bull at the time, so I had my Red Bull party pass and my accreditation. So I went anywhere, and I took all my mates with me for the next 10 days. So
lift it up.
Yeah, you got to live it up. And
you had to numb the pain somehow. Why not with a bunch of Red Bull?
Well, yep, and lots of other things. Liquid form, that is. I was an athlete, retired athlete, and so So no, we went and enjoyed Australia. There's a lot of Aussies in Whistler.
Well, I was going to say it's basically a home Winter Olympics for Australia and Whistler, isn't it?
Right.
Come on,
exactly. So there was a lot of friends there who were living there, and a lot of my mates that when you're skiing on the World Cup or at a high level, everybody's going around in a similar direction, so we were great friends with the Canadians, and a lot of Canadian guys are from that area and girls, and and their families and friends. So it was really fun. It was a super enjoyable time. Unfortunately, my body wasn't playing the game. That was it.
You still finished both events though. So you got 30th in the Super G, 39th in the downhill. I mean, obviously with everything that you had gone through from that injury in July to even just getting to the damn Olympics. I mean, can you reflect back 12 years later and kind of look at that as an achievement that you finished and finished quite well?
Yeah, I mean, my brain works in a way that if I've done it once, I can do it again, no matter what's going on at the time, right? So I was fully convinced that I could ski to a top 15 potential. Mind over matter is a pretty amazing thing, and couple that with a bit of adrenaline, you can, going into that Super G event. I had ice. I had multiple cortisone shots coming in that week leading in, and a lot of anti-inflammatories and painkillers and things, and I had my knee just wrapped in ice for like an hour, like literally till about 30 seconds before I went out the gate. So you kind of go once I got out of the start gate, you can't feel the pain. You're in the moment. So and when you're not feeling the pain, well, you can push your body. I mean, a lot of athletes have done this. They've been able to succeed under really trying and difficult circumstances and been injured and whatnot. And so, I was expecting to be better than 30th. I was happy that I was in the top 30. There was some athletes that competed better than me on the day, obviously, and that I would have liked to, because you always put someone else's achievements as a bit of a marker. And so I would have loved to have done better in my last race. And just finishing was never really like a goal for me ever in my life. It's, I just started doing some mountain bike races, some enduro races with my kids, and I go to the start and I'm like, I'm just going to take it easy. Yeah, just like never raced mountain bikes before. And then as soon as the freaking start gate's there and the guy's going, you've got 10 seconds, it's like, I call it the red mist, right? The red mist just descends over my eyes, and all consequence is out the window, and it's like must win at all costs. Like I'm a complete idiot. So, so it doesn't matter, like I've done the same thing in motocross that I've never raced motocross before, but thought I could go in and win the bloody race,
I do that with all my sporting teams that I go for, John. I'm like, yeah, Carlton will win the premiership this year, every year. No, it doesn't matter how crap our players are. We will win it this year.
That's funny. So, like I said, it was a great experience, and we had a great party.
I guess you partied up a little bit more, maybe knowing that you retired, and then kind of think like, fuck, I've got to work out my life after these games, but fuck, I'm just going to drink Red Bull for the next 10 days. And that's a future Jono problem. That's on the plane back to Australia problem. Right now, it's all about the fun.
You can probably ask that question to my wife. I do her head in, because that is exactly how I roll. I'm dealing with today, and tomorrow we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I'm a bit more I guess strategic now that I have kids and family and bills to pay and all that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'm trying to skirt them as hard as I can. So that's
why you're doing a podcast when you're meant to be working, right, Jono? Not
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So, but no, mate. Like you've got to. I often say to people, like, because that mentality took place my whole life, right? My mum wanted me to go, and she was like, you need to do well in your HSC, and you need to get a good UAI, and then at least you don't have to go to university, but at least you can go to university. And I was like, what? I'm not going to university. I'm going to be a ski racer. And she's like, well, what if you're not going to be a ski racer? And I'm like, well, what if? I don't know. Like, I'm going to be a ski racer. And so, that's a lot of people, the question is often, come up like, well, what was your plan? And I was like, well, I didn't have a plan. My plan was just to do as much fun stuff as I could and work it out and try and be successful. And I think, that's led me to be, to do a number of things in my life that I probably would have not done had I had a predetermined course, had I had that piece of paper that says you're a this or you're a that. I don't have that piece of paper. So I've got to make it up, and I've got a minimum standard of living of which I would like to provide my family. And it's like, well, shit, I better make that one work. What are we doing this week? And that's proven to be a really good thing, a bit daunting at times and a little bit nerve-wracking. I probably didn't sleep much last night with a few things on my mind, but hey man, I'm talking to you on a Thursday morning, 9 o'clock. You're in America. I'm just cruising at home, drop my kids at the bus, go for a ride later. Yep. You've got to choose your own adventure. And at the end of the day, it's like going to the Olympics. You're not going to get there and by taking it easy. You just got to put the hammer down and work hard.
It's a great attitude to have, I think, with that, because it's a whole other episode we could get into that moment when you do retire and everything you're talking about, kind of what is next. But it also, I guess, on the positive side of things, it presents a bunch of opportunities that, again, as you were saying, you probably didn't think you'd ever do. I mean, commentating in Olympic Games next to Matt Hill, something like that, which, we talk about someone like Bruce McAvaney, you got these people you look up to, and then all of a sudden you're kind of in his position, which is, I can imagine, something you never thought you would be, is commentating on an Olympic Games a few years later. So things like that present themselves, which I'm sure you just, you jump at as soon as you get given the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. It was great to be able to do that. As you can tell, I love talking, Mr. Woodworth. So
you fit well on this show, then, John.
Natural progression to go into to do that. I really loved it, and I would love to do more of it. Channel 7, taps if you're listening. So yeah, I think that it is really exciting closing a chapter and opening a new one. I had my then girlfriend, now wife. She's awesome and she loved the adventure. So it was totally fine. It's a bit more difficult to pop and change about now, but I think that, if you go in with your eyes wide open, being a professional athlete, you meet so many amazing people. The doors that are open to you that probably otherwise wouldn't be, or would be more difficult to get your foot into. You meet really, really amazing people and forge some great relationships, which then you can ask a question of somebody later down the track to help you in that decision or that strategy or direction or whatever it is you're going to do. And I think that, that athletic path is something, it just gives you so much opportunity no matter what.
You also did a bit of coaching, I believe, after you had retired. I mean, what was that kind of like, switching from doing the sport to then teaching the sport? Was it something that you enjoyed, something that maybe you'd like to get back into, kind of, get some of the future alpine skiers that are up on the ranks in Australia at the moment?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved coaching. One, being on the mountain, and I do these things at the moment with Fredbo, where like last season we did this, sunrise sessions, this incredible experience at the resort here in Fredbo, and I'd host it with one of the marketing team, and it sucked. You get up at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, it's 4:30, it's minus 10 degrees. What am I doing? And then as soon as I'm on the hill, like as soon as I'm on the snow, still in the dark, putting everyone in a snowcat, I'm like, this is an amazing office. And then you go to the top of the mountain and you watch the sunrise and you're like, I would not give this up for anything. Like, this is next level. So, coaching delivers that as well, because, that's how we started our day, 7-8 months a year for 15 years or however long I was doing it for. And then to be able to do that, to go back to coaching, you're in the same elements. And that's amazing. The only problem was that, I'd spent 20 years traveling the world with my coaching staff, like coaches, different teams from all around the world. We trained with the Brits, we trained with the Canadians, we trained with the Swedes. And pretty much every coach had the same problem, which was they were either, not all of them, it's a generalization, but a lot of them were either, divorced, getting divorced, didn't see their kids, not seeing their partner, all of that stuff. If on that international stage where you're always traveling, and because of our geographical location, you're always traveling. You get a few months at home, 3-4 months, 5 months maybe if you're lucky, but there is a ton of traveling. So I identified pretty early that if I was, it was not long after Vancouver that I dropped a knee on my wife Caroline, and we decided we wanted to start a family and all that sort of stuff. And it was a clear decision of, at the time I was coaching locally here and then the national junior team. So there was a bit of a path there as to what I could achieve and go and do. But I just didn't think that would be fair on Caroline and our soon to be kids, Lily and Banjo. So made that decision and completely changed path and direction and went into a few things that were totally not ski related, but had to make that decision and pivot and do the best for my family that I was creating.
We'll ask about that in just one second, but just quickly, just on the topic of the future of Alpine in Australia, we've obviously just seen, Louis, Greta and Catherine in Beijing. Where are we at in terms of the future of the sport? Do we have some up-and-comers? Do you feel there's a positive future, or do we still have a bit of work to go? Are we focusing too much on the freestyles and the snowboarding, and we need to kind of get a bit of focus back into the alpine skiing?
So yeah, look, definitely there's some talent in Australia. There's some great athletes and they're training really hard and they're putting in a lot of effort. There was a couple of athletes that were unable to get to the games this year. And they're certainly got the potential to succeed. As far as alpine and other sports and disciplines are concerned for Australia, not taking away anything from any of the other disciplines, because it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, it's bloody hard to succeed. But traditionally, alpine skiing has it has one of, if not the highest uptake internationally. And because of that and because of its rich history, alpine skiing has been going, and racing has been sort of the number one event throughout Europe and Scandinavia and whatnot, for decades, if not centuries. And so it's so ingrained in the roots of those cultures, in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, wherever it is. The depth of their program and talent pool is so phenomenal, and the money that's funneled into those programs is so, the pockets are deep. So for Australians to be competitive at a world stage, even when I was competing, and my teammates Craig and Bradley and AJ and all those guys, and back to Michael Dixon in 2002. And there was heaps of them, actually. I could go for ages. It was really hard to do it, and it's still going to be really hard to do it because we just don't have the financial support to go and be on par with our team structure like Austria would. So to give you an example, on the World Cup, you'll see 6 Austrian team coaching or staff, be that PR, it could be your PR through your physio, through your ski techs, through the actual coaches on the hill. It's like 6-1 coaches to athletes. Or wow. Staff to athletes. And we're on the inverse, right? So we're the flip side of that, in that we might be, if we're lucky, we're 1-6. If we're not going off and training with another team. So, and which was often the case, which we'd pair up with the likes of the Brits or the Canadians. We'd pay a fee and we'd go in and we might take one support staff, and then we utilize all their staff. That's how we were able to do it. So, coming back to it, unfortunately, Zali was the last one to really achieve on podium at World Champs in the Olympics, and since then, we haven't got that continuation of funding to build that pathway and that program and feed those young kids all the way to the top. And snowboard and moguls and aerials and ski cross, like there's a lot of other sports that have been really successful in their own right, and it's been really hard for those athletes to succeed, but they've done it. And now Australians, as a general rule of thumb, they love to see winners. So if I'm the AOC and I've got Alpine skiing, which has whatever it has, 10,000 or 15,000 competitive men, and I haven't had a Winter Olympic medal for whether it's been 24 years, versus snowboard or moguls or whatever, any other event, not going to cherry pick any of them, that are getting medals and does have depth of talent. Well, there's no way they're going to pull the cash out of those events and put them into something that hasn't been performing for a couple of decades. That's just the bottom line. So it's going to be a super hard slog for Alpine in Australia to get back to that top. That very highest level. It's absolutely achievable. We've proven that it can be done. At one stage, I think it was 2002, there was 11 of us on the national team. And from memory, I think we were all top 100 in the world. Wow. And some of us were top 50. So Jenny Owens and myself, we were top 50. When was that? That was 2003 or 4, I think. Australia is full of talent. There's no doubt about that. It's just making sure that we get the pathway right and the right people are involved at the right levels to ensure that the athletes are getting what they need to succeed, and then it can 100% be done.
Well, I'm just saying this now. At the time of recording this, we're a few weeks away from an election, and a certain skier who won that medal may or may not be involved in politics and seeking re-election. So Zali, you've been on this show before. If you're listening, how about we start campaigning for some money for the sport that made you an Olympic medalist? So just Zali, come on.
Good on you, Zali. Yeah. There's a good argument. We're great partiers if we don't succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Because is there any chance that you would switch into politics? Is this an alpine skiing route that if you're either partying or going to politics?
You know what? I'd hazard a guess and say that I shoot it a little too straight for politics.
That makes it more entertaining, though. Come on.
It does, yes. Probably not my preferred field. I don't know if my next pivot will be into politics, but you never know.
Never know. Stranger things have happened. I mean, just on that topic, back to what you're saying before. I mean, what are you up to now? Give us an insight into kind of what the life of Jono Brauer is at the moment.
Yeah, lots of things going on actually. So after skiing, after coaching, I just did some civil construction work. I very quickly realised that I had a bobcat for a property that I owned. So I was like, what can make me some money? Bobcat, sweet. So I got into some contracting in that, but quickly realised moving dirt from one location to another for the next 30 years wasn't my bag either. So I got into retail, so I opened a franchise store, a Total Tools franchise store in Canberra. We built that up to be pretty successful, and then we sold that in 2017. And we did that because I just had this urge to get back to the mountains. I wasn't happy sitting and in an office all day and staring at a car park. So we moved back to the mountains with no plan. My wife was a little bit concerned when I told her I wanted to sell the shop that was, giving us a pretty cushy lifestyle. And she's like, and then what? And I'm like, I don't know, but let's go. Yay.
They all love to hear.
Yeah. So, a couple of things we actually did get back into coaching. I did a bit of work here in the Thredbo in the resort, set up a pathway program for, as well as alpine skiing across all disciplines, so snowboard and moguls and slopestyle as well. So that's a nationally accredited program now that Thredbo runs. So I ran that for a few years, and then started actually off to the side of that a coaching program in Italy where we take families, Australian families overseas, and we run tailored training programs and family holidays throughout the school holidays in January and April. And then my biggest focus at the moment is I launched a brand of mountain bike apparel and protection, predominantly focused on kids. It's Sendy. There we go.
There it is, Sendy. Look at that.
There it is.
Branded up, Jono. There it is.
Oh,
look at it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There you go.
Shameless plug.
No, I'm going to give you. You can have more. Where's the website? Where can people find it? Come on.
Yeah, Sendy. www.sendygear.com.
Perfect. There it is.
So we're a small business, but it started because I moved back to the mountains. My kids wanted to get into riding, and I couldn't find very much product available for them, and didn't fit very well, and it was really expensive. So I thought, I've got a few contacts I can leverage here, and I'll create a solution. So that's been going really well. We've got about 52 stores that are reselling, and we also sell direct off our e-commerce site. We've got a distributor in New Zealand that has around 25 stores now on board, and we're starting to branch out into new markets. So that's really the main focus of what I'm doing at the moment. And then, I should say my number two focus, and then my number one focus is when I had my tool shop. I didn't really see my family, my kids and my wife. So I just worked 100-hour weeks and drank like 12 coffees a day. So I had to kick that habit and spend some more time with the family. So that's my number one priority. And we're just building a house in Jindy at the moment.
Great.
And just get into a nice rhythm. And the kids ride bikes and motorbikes, and we water ski and we ski obviously, and we try and travel as much as we can, and try and find that balance, that work-life balance. And excuse me, I'm sneezy. Try and find that work-life balance with the kids, and just make the most of every day.
Fantastic.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, sounds like a perfect way to live it up, I say. What was that, sendygear.com? That's what it is?
Yep, that's it, sendygear.com. Yep, so that's, anyone need any great mountain bike gear from a small Australian business,
sendygear.com. It's where to go. I always give an opportunity for people to plug their things, and I'm glad you can do that now for it, Jono. We do like to wrap up with a set of just fun little get to know you questions, which I'll get to in just a second. But before I do get to that, I've got to ask you one quick thing, because during Beijing there was one woman that I was very much focused on. That's Queen Esther. Can we just talk up the great Esther Ledecker right now? Like, how amazing is she? Any opportunity to bring her up, Jono, when we're talking alpine skiing. I mean, come on, we've got to bring her up, right?
You're talking about because of her athletic ability.
Absolutely. What else would they be talking about? I have no idea what else you'd be talking about there.
Yeah, she's a phenom. it's hard enough. We touched about it on Alpine skiing to choose a discipline, right? Like it's hard enough to choose a discipline and or be successful across multiple disciplines in one sport. There's only a handful of athletes that can be top 5 in the world in slalom, giant slalom, downhill, and super G and combined. Now you throw an entirely different sport in. And she is just an incredible athlete, and you and I did some chats about that over the games, and obviously you were doing a lot of work and looking at some information and data and stats and whatnot, and I was doing the same, and because I was really genuinely engaged to see what would happen in this games. So I look back at her snowboard results, and for a lot of people who are listening, they probably wouldn't know, she only did like 2 World Cup events leading into the Olympics. She did two in parallel GS, I should say. So she did like 2 events. I think she had a first and a second, and that second event was like 2 months or 3 months prior to the games. And then she comes out and bloody wins it again. And then
in a canter, if you don't mind, she wasn't even challenged. Yeah,
exactly. And then in Alpine, I think was she 4th? I think in the
4th or 5th. Yeah, in the
downhill and super G.
Yeah, and she crashed out in one of them, didn't she? Ultimately, at the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because she basically was just like, "Fuck it, I'm just going to do an extra event," which I don't even think she was meant to do, and still got a top 10.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. She just she after that, I don't know if you'd been following the World Cup, but she had podiums back straight out of the freaking Olympics. She's back to the World Cup and she's taking podiums in Alpine, and that's her focus now. So the fact that she can be focusing on Alpine, she can be, podiuming or on the podium day in and day out, every other weekend in Alpine, and then go, oh yeah, I'll throw my snowboard on as well. Like, have a crack. Win some World Cups, win the Olympics again. No worries. I'll see you in 4 years.
Casual weekend, right?
Yeah, that was pretty much like what I do every 4 years, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what Dale Begg Smith used to do. He'd be like, February, Olympics. Yeah, probably should do that, shouldn't I? But, I mean, it's the thing that always amazed me, and I remember having conversations about this with you during Beijing, because, again, to armchair quarterback, critic person guy like me who's just it's just you're swapping 2 pieces of wood for 1 piece of wood. It's easy, but it's not that simple to go from skiing to snowboarding, is it?
No, 100%. It's extremely difficult. It's like I don't know, what's a comparison? Maybe it's like car racing to motorbiking, to MotoGP. Casey Stoner did that. He was world champion MotoGP, and then he went into V8 supercars, and I think he lasted half a season, and then peeled out again. He just couldn't cut it, right? So there's the body movement is completely different. There's one edge opposed to 2 that you're gripping on the snow. The courses are different. The only thing that's the same is that you're in the mountains and it's you're on snow. So she is a phenomenal athlete.
I've ticked off the off the podium bingo today. We've talked about Dale Begg Smith and Estelle Ledecker. So there you go. Just
good on you.
Make sure that we've done that. All right, John, now we like to close out with a set of sort of fun get-to-know you questions. As always, these are based on a questionnaire given to Team Canada athletes ahead of Pyeongchang and Rio. Bit of fun. There's always a drawing element. If you're bored today during work and you want to send us in some drawings to share on social media, you are welcome to. Don't know how your drawing skills are. It's not a requirement, but it's a possibility if you're bored, all right? So just we'll get to those as we move along. But I'll start off with your favorite all-time Olympic moment is.
Ooh, it's probably going to be Tora Bright winning gold.
Nice. Which would have been amazing, I imagine, being there and sort of soaking it up as a teammate of hers, being there in Vancouver.
Yeah, I was there. I was there with my family and all our friends, and in the stands. It was one that we had to go and watch. And Tora, I actually grew up skiing with her older sister Rowena, who was an Alpine racer, and Tora and Abby and Rowie were all in the race club at Threadbow, right? So, I knew them all. We've been great mates, and the other 2 brothers as well, Bernie and Rowan. And
awesome.
Yeah, so that was amazing. That was an extremely unforgettable experience.
Great. Well, good to hear. As a kid, your favorite sports team was?
Oh, geez, mate. I'm a ski racer. I focus on number one.
You don't need team sports to follow. Who cares
Sports
about
team.
them?
Okay. Prior to ski racing, I did watch a little bit of footy, and for whatever reason, I like the Canberra Raiders. I haven't watched a game of rugby league in probably 25 years, but outside, I watched a couple of Origins, but for some reason, Canberra Raiders were my bag back when I was in the single digits.
That was like Mal Meninga days back then, wasn't it?
You got it. And not only that, when we lived in Canberra, I was in Narrabundah and my kids went to Red Hill Primary, and I look over to my left at pickup one day and there's this dude and his pluggers and his little footy shorts and a little bit less trim than he used to be. I'm like, Jesus, I don't know that guy.
Wow.
And he's the dude. He's always on the ads, the Malaganis Johnson Lawyers. He does these ads in Canberra because his name's Mal, right? He's got nothing to do with
Yeah,
law,
that makes sense. Yeah. Wow.
So there you go. I saw Mal a little later in life as well.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of politics, there's someone whose politics career didn't last very long, did it? So, I mean,
you got to have a crack.
You got to have a crack, exactly. You might last shorter than he did. There you go. You can set your own record. If you could be a superhero, who would you be?
I would probably be Iron Man.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I think because he wears a very protective suit and hopefully gets injured less than I did as a professional athlete.
You'd want to hope so with that suit that he's wearing all the time. So, yeah.
That's right.
Cool like Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, right? Like, I mean,
he's been a rock star.
Yeah, gee, that'd be all right. Your favorite music artists are?
I'm not a big muso fan. My good teammate Craig Branch, we had this thing one day. We were on like a 10-hour drive, and our physio Simon, and we had to choose our own list of like a mixtape, and you had to fill it up with like 20 different songs. And my 20 songs, they started with bands at A, and I got about halfway through B. So I'm like, pretty quick list. I got through that pretty quickly. And they just like, you're an idiot. What are you doing, mate? What about blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, ooh.
Wow.
But we did go to, this is just a tribute festival a couple of weekends ago in Jindabyne, and Queen tribute were playing, and my daughter was like, as soon as she heard them, she's like, Dad, we're going to the front, put me on your shoulders. And I had her on my shoulders for like an hour and a half, just ripping to Queen. She was singing her little heart out. So
wow.
Queen's on the mind. So let's say good old Freddie and Queen.
I like that. That works well. How old is your daughter that she's repping into Queen already?
10.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Mad frother. She made me play it in the car all the way down the hill, 30 minutes. And then we got there and she was like, when's Queen playing? She was devastated. She thought we'd missed it. So, Queen's it for today.
I'm glad that she's into Queen and not listening to like Taylor Swift or something like that. She's a smart girl. So that works. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, this is a tough question. We often debate this at home. It's got to be, I would say it's probably going to be a mango or a chicken schnitzel.
Oh, nice.
So similar, right?
Very, very closely related foods, often confused, I can imagine.
Regularly in our house. Schnitties because you can get them everywhere all year round, and mangoes because they're this little delicate morsel of happiness every few months every year.
Delicate morsel of happiness. That's you should work for like the Mango Board of Australia. I think you just found their slogan. Those ads for bananas for a while. Where's the mango ads? Like that.
Come on, man.
Sells it. Wow. I like that. Where was your favorite place to compete?
At home was always fun, actually. Probably, competing at Thredbo, even though they weren't as high level, there was some tough competitions there. But a lot of the time, my mum used to volunteer as the starter in the start game.
Wow.
Yeah, so she never watched me race. Like, she'd never go and stand on the side of the course, but she'd always volunteer to help. And for whatever reason, she, for many, many, many years, she was the starter. And I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know about you, but as an athlete, occasionally I get a little bit nervous. And if you get a little bit nervous, you might just need to do a little puff, little fluffy, just to release some of those nerves. That's how I release the nerves.
I did it just before this interview. I just let it go.
There you go.
Yeah,
I just did it then.
Yeah, hey, it's got to happen. Better out than in.
And so I'm like, shit, I'm going to tell a story. I'm nervous. So every time, and it was actually generally, I don't know why, a lot of the times it was when Mum was in the start gate, I'd get a little bit nervous because she's watching me race. And every time she'd be like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't you do it. And I'd be like, no, Mum, I'm good. And then it'd be like 10 seconds. Sorry, Mum. Kick out.
Wow.
Anyway, Threadbow is a great place to bring up some memory from racing.
I was going to say they always warned you about not eating yellow snow. What about brown snow? Is that always?
I never got that far, Ben. Come on, man.
Didn't quite get that nervous.
I'm not that bad.
Oh, come on, Ben. There's a line there, all right? Thoughts are okay, but that's just too far.
Mate.
Come on. This is a quality podcast. It's an award-winning show, man. We don't talk about shit like that. Come on now. We're at Channel 7, the epitome of iconic media. If you want to draw a picture of yourself, that's the first drawing here. But again, that's see how you feel today. One thing that you have always wanted to do is?
I've always wanted to race either Formula One or V8 supercars.
That is a good answer. I like it. Do you follow both closely? Are you sort of staying up late on a Sunday to watch the F1s, or? Yeah,
I don't get much time during the weekends to watch the V8s. I'm always off doing stuff with the kids. I actually don't have much time to watch TV at all, to be honest. But I do love to get into the Formula One as much as I possibly can. Though, with kids, I've got a subscription to about 27,000 different bloody streaming apps, and I'm such a tight ass that I refuse to get KO, where I can watch the Formula One whenever I want. So every week I cancel the subscription to Disney and Disney Plus and Netflix and Prime and whatever else it is, so I can watch KO, and then they get turned back on 3 days later. I go, yeah.
Yeah, done.
No, I do. I always try and watch the replays, and good. I love it.
So your team Dan, is that all you care about, or is there other drivers or teams you follow?
Look, I just love the racing. I'm not like I'm not a team cheerleader by any means. I don't, you wouldn't
go about yourself, Jono. We've established it. It's all you.
Yeah, come on, I'm number one. I don't have a McLaren shirt sitting in the cupboard, right? But Ricardo, he's a legend. I'm actually working on another little project at the moment with a brand that's big in America, and I would dearly love to get him on board. He's the king. I love Ricardo. That guy, he's so freaking cool and funny. Like, what a life, man. And he knows it, and he's just living it up.
I've got a feeling you two would get along, just based on your personalities. I think you two would you two would hit it off, I think.
Well, Ricardo, Danny, if you're listening, man, hit me. Let's go race.
We've tried it with a few of our guests before, and we'll get him eventually. We'll
maybe
we'll
we could maybe the hook could be that he can race an Olympian and I on snow, and I can race a Formula One on the cars.
We had Ash Werner on a bobsledder, and we mentioned that you could see he would be into bobsled, so we can get him on board on some skis as well. So I just think just have some sort of real winter Olympic sort of come together, and then just you all race his McLaren while he's off busy, skiing and bobsledding.
Hey, look, it could be the electric go-karts at the local track with McLaren sticker on the side. I don't care, but let's go racing.
Just put it on there. That works a treat, I think. What is your favorite thing to do in the summer?
Oh, it's mountain bikes. That's hands down. Actually, I say that it's mountain bike, and we mountain bike a lot. Obviously, that's part of the reason why we started a mountain bike brand. But we also bought a 1984. What's it? Oh, that's what it's called. A 1984 Caribbean Jaguar water ski boat.
Wow.
And we've nicknamed it Hot Rod. and we often go out on the lake and go water skiing and tubing and all that sort of stuff. So summertime it's a mix of riding hot rod. Don't take that the wrong way there, Ben, and riding mountain bikes.
Are you trying to imply that I would say such dirty things, Jono?
What was it? How did we start this podcast off?
Stroking. So we've moved on from that. That was an hour ago. We've grown up since then. Your favourite movie is?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, good one. Yes. No skiing in that, but still a good movie.
No, good movie. Yep, love that one. I did watch No Time to Die on the plane the other day, and that was pretty good.
Well, I've got to ask then, because subtle plug, one of our other shows, James Bond podcast, 007, listen to it now. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but what did you think of the ending?
Yes. Interesting. Won't go into it. Didn't think that was going to happen.
No.
No. I'm intrigued because that's like, that's a franchise of all franchises, right? Like, So what's coming next?
Watch this space. Yeah. Maybe you could be the next James Bond and you could rectify it somehow.
Wow. Now that would be a hell of a pivot. If I, tell my wife while we lie in bed tonight, what do I think I'm going to do tomorrow? Babe, I've got it. I've worked it out.
I want to be the next James Bond. Hey.
Look, Daniel Craig, he wasn't bald, but I mean, Jason Statham, he's bald. Like maybe I could pretend I'm as cool as that guy and then like segue into being Bond.
Exactly.
And I know Robbie Madison. Sorry to cut you off. I'm mates with Robbie Madison from our Red Bull days, and he was doing the stunts for No Time to Die. So, man,
wow.
I'm basically there.
You really are. Like you are one step away from James Bond, literally. Then, so I think
it's amazing
perfectly.
What you can tell yourself.
Yeah, and like with like back when Craig was announced, it was like oh no, he can't be Bond because he's blonde. I'm sure people can accept a bald Bond if they can accept a blonde Bond. So
well. Yeah, I mean, I'll just take the Bond any way I can get it.
And come on, your wife's not, like, what wife on this planet would be like, oh no, I don't want to go to bed every night with James Bond. Like, I mean, oh God, no. Like, geez, what a terrible life that would be.
She's a realist. She just knows that she'd be going to bed with someone else then.
And the only time you would let that happen. So just saying, it's win-win for everyone. If you're listening, Barbara and Michael, you've got your James Bond right here. Now this question is your favourite place to visit in Canada, but let's switch it up to your favourite place to visit in Australia is.
Wowee. I don't get to do enough travelling around Australia. I would, I can't say the mountains because I live in the mountains. I quite enjoy just going camping in the high country. So we went down to Corryong not long ago. We went down to this Man from Snowy River Festival. We went camping on the river down there. That was awesome. That, beautiful. Anywhere outdoors, and I don't love the cities. So, I would say, put me in the mountains, put me out in the dirt. Happy days.
Happy days. There you go. Your favourite cartoon to watch growing up was?
Was it He-Man?
He-Man, hey.
Yeah, it depends what age we are.
Well, He-Man's a good one. I think that wins already.
I'll take He-Man. Let's go with He-Man and Sheila. She's a hottie. Yeah.
Needs to be brought up more, He-Man. Why not? It doesn't get mentioned as much as it does. Now, I don't know if it holds up very well, but who cares? It was an innocent
exactly.
time. If you had to do karaoke, I know you love your music, clearly, but if you had to do karaoke, what would you sing to?
Oh, it's got to be Queen, doesn't it? Wouldn't it be Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah. I think your daughter's going to let you get away with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. My wife did a lot of stints in Japan. She ran a lodge there for a number of years, and then she studied there as well. And so we've been a couple of times, and anytime we find a karaoke bar, we drop in and let it rip. So,
perfect.
Queen would obviously get it run.
Is there video footage of this, Jono? Is there something you can share with us?
There's video footage that won't be given to you, Ben, yes.
Damn, I like how you trust me. I thought we were bonding in this interview. I guess I'm going to work on my interview skills. Last question for you. If you could be an Olympian in any other sport besides your own, what would it be?
What would it be? would it be like an Olympic champion in a sport, or just an Olympian in general?
It just says an Olympian in general, but I mean, if we want to shoot for the stars, you can say an Olympic champion.
Look, Olympian in general. It's got to be winter sports. You know what would be really exciting? I think ski jumping would be really exciting.
And we've never had a ski jumper, Jono. This is the only winter sport Australia's never had a Winter Olympian. So there you go, history making.
You almost had a biathlete in my mate Ben Sim, who shameless plug to Simbo. He was a great cross country skier, but he held the VO2 max record at the AIS for about 12 years. So VO2 max is how much oxygen you put in your lungs, right? And they tried so hard to poach him to go to cycling, and he refused. He wanted to stay, and that's actually Sammy Kennedy Sim's husband, our ski cross athlete, who's just recently retired. He was going off to do biathlon, and he did some training ski jumping, which would have been super cool to watch. But anyway,
it's going to happen one day. Like this is we've had a lot of ski jumpers on this show, and I'm constantly talking. I'm trying to get them to come to Australia, to start this program up, because we've had a Nordic combined. The great Hal Nadal back in the 60s, he was our only Nordic combined athlete. So halfway there. So like we just need to get somebody to ski jump.
That's what Simbo was doing. Yeah, Simbo was going for Nordic combined. Now I reckon if you get Roy and HG to reignite the plan for Smigs 2038 or whatever it was, and everybody, stop recycling and start dumping all your rubbish on top of Smigs, we could potentially build a ski jump. There you go. We're changing the course of history.
As I keep trying to point out to everybody, we're 10 years away from the Brisbane Olympics. Now, they are in winter. They are Winter Olympics for Australia. So you could have a ski jump. Like, just think about it right there. The IOC would be down for it, I'm sure. Have a Winter Olympics in Australia. You have a ski jump next to the swimming. Why not? It will work.
They've built the Jeff Henke Centre in Brisbane already, up on the Goldie, and that is a ski jump, not for traditional ski flying or ski jumping, but why not just add another ramp on next door and they could land in the ocean?
And you could be the trailblazer, Jono, like James Bond and ski. Like he did ski jump in For Your Eyes Only. So technically, you're like, come on, it's all fitting together. Your wife will be fine with it. She'll be all good.
Yeah, no, I can see the link. It's just seamless.
Yeah, and those knees and injuries. I mean, sure, ski, whatever. Yeah, just a bit of landing.
Stunt double for that.
Exactly. It works a treat that way. Jono, before I let you go, you plugged the business. Plug it again. Anything else with your socials that people can sort of stay up to date with what you're up to?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, so I'm socially adverse personally. Don't have time to put anything on socials, but for my business, it's #SendyGear, www.sendygear.com. So that's basically where you're going to find, awesome mountain biking apparel and protection for kids and adults at significantly reduced prices. So Perfect. It's just you take a handful of hands out of the pie and you can deliver great quality at a really good price. So or jump on our website and find your local stockist. So that's the bag right there, buddy.
That's simple. Jono, mate, it's been so fun being able to relive everything from your career and everything else since and do this chat today and distract you from work for a good hour. It's sure it's a good start for your day too. But appreciate it and look forward to seeing you in Bond 26. Maybe with some mangoes. Bring some mangoes back to the James Bond franchise.
Delicate morsels of happiness. Maybe that could be the No Time to Die with morsels of happiness.
Or maybe that's the Bond girl right there. I think her name is Delicate Morsels of Happiness. That sounds like a Bond girl right there. Come on now. Who's playing that? Maybe your wife playing the Bond girl. My wife.
Yeah, exactly. Mate, she's hot enough, let me tell you.
Hey.
So, very good. Hey, Ben, thank you very much. And shameless plug for Ben Waterworth. If anyone's in America and needs a fantastic journo /podcast /legend, he's currently over there dominating the streets of Manhattan. So hook him up.
I appreciate that, Jono, and your check will be in the mail for giving that subtle plug. So thank you.